Welcome to the introduction and instruction video of Self-Assessment Tool 1 on future-proof food safety governance. During the previous video, we introduced you to the concept of drivers of change for the emergence of food safety risks, which are linked to the external business environment of food businesses. We have social, technological, economic, environmental, and political drivers, all of which can have an impact on the food safety management system and can cause food safety shocks. Actions may be needed, and those actions are linked to resilient response strategies. The focus of this video will be Self-Assessment Tool 1, the link between the drivers of change in the external dynamic business environment towards the impact on core food safety management activities. This focuses on the first part of the model DPSIR, where we touch on drivers, pressures, the state, and the impact. The scope of Self-Assessment Tool 1 is microbiological food safety only, so we're not focusing on chemical food safety hazards, also not on allergens or physical hazards. We also focus on food safety shocks. Think about the difference between innovations, which we define on the long term, and food safety shocks, which we define on the short to medium long term. The starting point of Self-Assessment Tool 1 are the drivers of change. During the tool, we present to you all the drivers on sub-driver level. We ask you to think about this driver, reflect this to your organization, and think about the food safety influence of the driver in your organization. And then in the second part, also on the impact on core food safety management activities. First, we will present all the sub-drivers. The question is just a yes or no question. Does this driver has a direct impact on your food safety management? And then for all the drivers you have selected, you project those on microbiological food safety and link those to core food safety management activities in quality control and quality assurance. With consumer behavior as example, I will show you how the self-assessment tool looks like. So consumer behavior has 4 sub-drivers: dietary choice, consumer knowledge, consumer awareness and attitude, and public awareness. And those are 2 screenshots of the self-assessment tool. So in the first part, we give you the 4 sub-drivers of consumer behavior with a yes or no button. Are these sub-drivers for the emergence of food safety risks important to consider in your organization because they can have a direct impact on food safety management activities? Again, within the scope, only considering food safety shocks, so no long-term innovations, and only in the current context of your organization, also only considering microbiological food safety. With those drivers, you will select as yes, think about the influence of the driver to food safety, the food safety pressure. And then for all drivers which you selected yes, the next question will be which food safety management activities are directly impacted by the sub-driver of dietary choice in your organization, where you have all the quality control and core quality assurance activities. With the selection you make there, think about the mechanism of impact of the driver, which influences food safety to the core activity in food safety management. For the next part of this video, I will go over all drivers and sub-drivers to give some more information which you can use during the self-assessment tool. And we'll start with the driver consumer behavior, social driver, which has 4 sub-drivers: dietary choice, the individual choice of a consumer for certain specific foods; consumer knowledge about food safety; consumer awareness and attitude towards food safety of the individual consumer; and then of a group of consumers, public awareness on food safety, which is also influenced, for example, by media or social media. The second social driver is demographic development, where we have 4 sub-drivers again: population change, so the size of the population, the prevalence of vulnerable groups. Think about young, old, pregnant and immunodeficient people; urbanization, the amount of people who live in urbanized regions; and migration and travel. Then the last social driver is health and well-being, where we have two sub-drivers, human health condition and resistant pests and diseases. Human health condition is on the individual level of the consumer, and also think about non-communicable diseases. And then we have resistant pests and diseases, think also about the use of antibiotics and antimicrobial resistance. Then we go to the technological drivers, where we have two main drivers, technologies in food production and technologies in food processing. First driver here presented is on food production, where we have three sub-drivers. One on primary production, which covers both animal-derived and plant-derived food production. Then we have one on products for food production. Think about the water used in food production, fertilizers used. Then we have a sub-driver on new food sources. Think about insects or algae, which are used for food consumption. Then we move to technologies in food processing with four sub-drivers: processing techniques and scale, food packaging, upcycling for food, and food formulation. For upcycling for food, from a technological perspective, think about introducing circular practices, use of side streams in the food chain. And for food formulation, think about certain trends, reduced fat, reduced sugar, reduced salt intake, high protein, high fiber, and so on. Then we move to the environmental drivers. The first one is environmental contamination with two sub-drivers: waste management and sewage treatment. Waste management in your business or in an organization, a group or organizations or a region, and sewage treatment covers wastewater treatment within your organization or also in a region, and how this influences food safety. Then we move to management of natural resources, where you have two sub-drivers: the use of side streams and water and soil management. With use of side streams, think about the use of alternative water sources, reusing waste products like manure in agriculture. Then we have water and soil management. And then the last environmental driver, climate change, which was already addressed also in a previous video. We have extreme weather events, think about floods and droughts, and general temperature change on the long term. Then we move to the economic drivers, where we have one driver, distribution, with two sub-drivers, global trade and distribution channels. With global trade, think about globalization, imports and exports, and the influence of this on food safety. And with distribution channels, we have both well-established paths to move products from the manufacturer to the consumer, but also some newer channels like e-commerce, last-mile distribution in urban environments, and so on. And then we move to the political drivers. First one, legislation, policies, and governance. We have three sub-drivers: good practices and standards, food legislation, and official monitoring and communication. So I can see more on the codex level, food legislation mainly on the EU level, and then maybe the official monitoring and food safety communication on the food safety authority level. And then the last driver, which was also previously touched on, is geopolitical instability with two sub-drivers: war and conflicts and fragmentation between nations. War and conflicts, think about the armed conflicts between regions and nations. Think about Ukraine, Russia, for example, and fragmentation between nations. Think about trade barriers, tariffs, regulatory divergence between regions. Think about US tariffs imposed by Trump, for example. To wrap up, the self-assessment tool 1 starts from the driver's perspective, focusing on the dynamic external business environment and how this puts pressure to food safety and pressure to organizations regarding food safety decisions in their food safety management system. Being aware of those drivers for the emergence of food safety hazards is important for food businesses, sector associations, but also maybe food safety authorities, all working together towards future-proof food safety governance. Apart from this instruction and introduction video, we will also have a second video with results from a case study with the Belgian food processing industry who used this self-assessment tool.